One of the best parts of V-Series and Vanguard to me is being able to see some of my favorite units from the old series brought into a really new creative light that I didn't ever think I'd see them in. And we've seen cards like Phantom Blaster Dragon, Dragonic Overlord, Alfred, all these things brought in and seen slightly different changes and nuances that make them more enjoyable cards to use for the most part. And that kind of brings you to the point where you're excited to see some of your old favorite cards being brought back into the game. And for me, there are 5 that stand out just beyond all others. Now I tried to keep this list to being a unique clan basis, so I'm not going to put 3 Shadow Paladin cards, for example, even though I probably could. And you won't see like Blaster Dark Revenger, Mordred Phantom, and Phantom Blaster Overlord, for example. That being said, one of the cards is obviously a Shadow Paladin card, as obviously it's my favorite clan, and that card is Cultists Witch Rias. Now the witch theme was something that was pretty short-lived in Shadow Paladins, but it was really interesting. You would basically fill up your opponent's field with grade 0 units by making them search the top cards of their deck, lowering the amounts of triggers in their deck, and then you would neg them based on how many grade 0s they had. And the primary card to be doing that with was Cultists Witch Rias. She had the Legion ability that, when it legioned, you could choose one of your rearguards with Witch in its name and retire it. If you did this, you could choose one of your opponent's vanguards, and you could make that vanguard lose 5,000 power for each grade 0 on their field until the end of the turn. Now deleting your opponent's vanguard is super fun. Dropping them down to 0, what a great feeling. But what about dropping them down to -16, or in some cases even lower? The witches were this really cool archetype where you could basically attack with a 5k unit and force your opponent to drop a 20k guard. That's insane. It was so fun. It was by far one of my favorite archetypes and favorite times in Vanguard, just to play this clan and ruin your opponent's day on a regular basis. So I'm really looking forward to this card being reprinted, and I hope it does come around. Coming in at the number 4 spot, we have one of my favorite cards from the original set. It was incredibly fun to play with, and that is Battler of the Twin Brush, Polaris. So this card straight up looks like Volibear from League of Legends, which I always thought was really cool. And he kind of had an effect sort of like Bison in the modern era. With Counterblast 2, when it attacks a Vanguard, you can stand one of your Great Nature rearguards and give it 4,000 power until the end of the turn, with the downside of that card being retired at the end of the turn. Now obviously we didn't exactly get to see this card get reprinted yet. We got Leopold instead, but Polaris for a lot of people was the main grade 3 for, you were kind of deciding whether you would run a Polaris or a Leopold deck, or mix them together sort of like you're doing now with Hamsuke and Leopold, and it was this really cool dynamic. But for me, I always liked Polaris a little bit more than Leopold, and I would love to see him be brought back into a spotlight. In the number 3 spot, we have Demon World Marquee Amon. Now, yeah, we got No Life King, and he's a cool card. Actually, the old No Life King was pretty trash when it came out, and honestly, when I saw that we were getting Dark Regulars, I thought for sure Amon would be their boss monster, but he wasn't. In fact, the new No Life King's ability is largely based on Amon's, where he would get 1,000 power for each Dark Irregular in their soul during your turn. So when No Life King rides, he gets plus 2,000 power for each until the end of the turn. So that's kind of similar. However, there's just this undeniable presence that Amon gives because of the awesome art style that he has, and being able to see him in the V-Series and see the new abilities is something I'm really excited for. He will forever be one of my favorite cards, and I'm just so excited to see what they do with him. In at the number 2 spot is by far my favorite card ever printed. I know I'm a Shadow Paladin player for the most part, however, there's no card in the game that I like more than Silverthorne Dragon Tamer Liqueur. She had the ability that you could Counterblast 3, which was, you know, still a lot, and choose a grade 0, 1, 2, and 3 Pale Moon from your soul and call them to separate circles. Now there was a grade 0 stand trigger that let you unflip a damage when you could slide it to soul, so that kind of made the ability cost 2, which made it super fun. But the art on Liqueur is just something I've always loved. She has the 2 colored eyes, she has this long hair and this really great design. Even the dragon that's seen in the background of her card just makes it such a cool feeling. It was just so fun to play with her. You could make these really outstanding combos, and you just got more and more aspects pushed into her as time passed. So because of all this, I'm really looking forward to Liqueur's re-release. In fact, there's no card I really want to see more than that, except for one. And I think you all know what that card is. Hey Yo Pineapple.